Yes, so just to let everyone know, this session is being recorded, so hopefully that's okay with everyone, and obviously you can be mindful of what you say and what you might put in the chat, because I think it will record the chat as well. As I was just saying to those that arrived a little earlier, my name's Joanna. I'm Joanna Smith. I am Head of Department of Management, and the 2 degree apprenticeship programs that we deliver here in the business school sit within my department, so that's kind of where my role is. We're joined, I'm not going to introduce everyone, and people will introduce themselves during the course of the session today, but we're joined by a number of colleagues across the university who support degree apprenticeships. So there's quite a few of us around to welcome you. This is, I believe, I can't see this because it says the meeting's being recorded, so I can't read the title. There we are, I've just moved it. This is our employer briefing, and I believe it's our first one, but certainly won't be our last. And a huge welcome and a huge thank you. We can't do and we can't deliver degree apprenticeships without you. This is very much an integral joint effort that we are doing for the apprentices in our joint care. So it's so important that we can work together, that we can celebrate, and I think we can celebrate. I'm looking at Alex because I can just see him on my screen. Some of the very recent successes of the endpoint assessments for some of our graduates. I think we can call them graduates, which is fabulous news and a huge success story. So I'm not sure what more to say now without sort of repeating what you're going to hear later, other than to say welcome and very much to say thank you. There's lots that we can learn, there's lots that we can do. Hopefully we're here to help us mutually navigate all those things as we keep progressing with this very important work. Yes, I look forward to maybe meeting some of you, hopefully physically, in the future, so we don't always have to do these through Zoom or other mechanisms, and we can continue to work together in this important work. Tars, if I can hand over to you. Okay. From Tars, is that okay?
Yeah, no, that's a problem. Thank you, Joanna. That's
no problem at all.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. So yeah, so welcome everybody, and as Joanna says, it's great to see sort of everybody online, but hopefully, our next one will be sort of face to face, and we can sort of actually meet each other properly. So I want to sort of start this off in terms of, well, why are we here, and sort of what is our sort of purpose? And ultimately, it's about sort of improving the apprenticeship journey and outcomes in terms of these sessions. And today's session is really just one of those tools to help build engagement with you, to help you understand the commitments to this program and how best we can sort of continually improve this process. Now, I will be holding these briefings, as Joanne alluded to, sort of twice a year, and they'll be attended by our core team who sort of help service and deliver our degree apprenticeships there. And I think Joanne mentioned that this session is being recorded, so just a little reminder there. And it's particularly for those people who are unable to sort of attend today, to use as a bit of a catch up, and also for yourselves to be able to replay back at your convenience as well. I want to also sort of thank everybody for completing the survey that I sort of sent out earlier, and from which actually broadly, you told us that degree apprenticeships actually work well for you, and that's great to hear. And from that sort of survey, we've sort of seen that, the great dialogue that's sort of going on within your sort of organisation, between your work-based mentors, your apprentices as well, to be able to understand that sort of apprentice performance there. But there's also areas which we need to sort of help develop better with engagement there. And these are sort of things we're going to sort of touch on as we go through. So we'll continue to sort of reference parts of the survey as we go on. And if we don't, then we've got a plan to sort of discuss those more in a bit more detail in the next session as well there. So, okay, so what I want to do is talk about sort of, well, just introduce really our team, and I'll start off with our academic team. So we've got Tracy White and Alex Altersky. Tracy looks after our level 7 SLMDA program, whereas Alex looks after our CMDA program level 6 there. So they both lead their sort of respective programs. Unfortunately, Tracy's not with us today. She's got a sort of bit of a personal situation going on, but she will be sort of hopefully present at future sort of meetings there. Our administrative team is led by Anna, who processes basically all of your applications and sort of keeps us in check with all the paperwork and documents there. Myself, I'm the sort of key account manager, and I make up really the sort of support team of the business school. So between Tracy, Alex, Anna and myself, we are part of the business school support team there. And my sort of role is relatively new, as again, sort of Joanna alluded previously. And I'm here to sort of help improve that engagement. And this event is an example of one, as well as sort of organising regular sort of health checks on a quarterly basis there. But we've also got Patrick and Helen who are joining us today from a university level. So both Patrick and Helen support the business school as well as the whole university from a degree apprenticeship there. And Patrick and Alex will introduce themselves a little bit more when they sort of do their sort of parts on this session. So I wanted to sort of kick off regards to the education inspection framework from Ofsted. And it sets out really sort of 3 key areas relating to degree apprenticeships, which is intent, implementation, and impact. And the first one, intent, in essence, this is about us as a provider to develop a curriculum which is designed to meet the needs of all learners, to provide the knowledge, skills, and behaviours for our apprentices to succeed in life. The curriculum is designed so that it enables the development of cumulative knowledge and skills for future learning and employment. And it sort of builds on the existing knowledge and experience of your employees and our apprentices there. Hence why a full range of sort of subjects are taught. The implementation. So this basically ensures the subject matter is taught, prompting discussion and critical thinking. Support is provided to all of our learners. This is via sort of our tutors on a one-to-one basis and regular reviews with our sort of work-based mentors there to ensure that understanding is checked, feedback provided as well. The observations and assessments are used positively to help sort of check learning and inform learning as well. And it's important that the right environment is actually created to foster learning using the right sort of resources and materials there. And if we move on to impact, so we got, so this is about the success of the apprentice and what this looks like. So this could be in terms of the apprentice attainment, the promotion they have as a result, the increased responsibility that they may sort of gain, and how they've effectively applied their sort of knowledge, skills and behaviours into the workplace there. Now, the other area that I wanted to sort of touch on is the apprentice employer feedback. Now, the apprentice employer feedback is a process which is ultimately there to sort of aid the successful journey of the apprentice from beginning to end. And what this diagram illustrates is the various points at which feedback can be collected to aid apprenticeship success. The process helps to ensure, or the recruitment process helps to ensure that your employee is able to benefit from being on the apprenticeship via an assessment of prior knowledge and development. So this is what we would probably refer to as like the skills scan. Now, your feedback is important in the application of the knowledge, skills and behaviours and its relevance in the workplace there. And this is to ensure it's working for the apprentice, and how can we help them to apply this from our end, as well as you helping them apply it within the workplace there as well. And that feedback is important for us to understand how that's going. I mean, regular reviews are probably the obvious place for your feedback, and you should, if you haven't already, sort of really attend on occasions as an observer with your work-based mentors so you can see firsthand the apprentice progress there. You need to collect evidence of pastoral support around well-being, and any advice or guidance that you give there. The ongoing sort of feedback from work-based mentors on their support, which can also be captured during the reviews as well, is important. Any support with the EPA, you can record, and this is around sort of managing expectations and preparing the apprentice from your end, and also then ultimately sort of collecting information on destination data, vocational progress, any awards that have sort of been gained as well. So all of that sort of helps, all those sort of various points help us sort of create evidence to be able to support that journey from beginning to end there. Great. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to hand over to Alex. Alex will be able to introduce himself, and he'll sort of cover off the CMDA and the SLMDA elements, sort of in lieu of Tracy as well. So over to you, Alex.
Thanks, Taz. Hi, everyone. Nice to meet you. Hopefully one day we can meet again in person as well. So I'm Dr. Alex Altersky. I'm the program leader for the CMDA, but I'm also a module coordinator and work on the SLMDA as well. So I know that program very well. Really, I think what I wanted to talk to you about is from an academic perspective, I program lead this course, but I understand, and we all understand, that actually the importance that these courses are delivered in unison with our employers. So really, if it's not for our employers, because a lot of the learning that takes place is in the workplace, then really, it's our employers that are bringing this learning to life and really being able to help develop these apprentices so that they can achieve the knowledge, skills and behaviours in the standard. Can I have the next slide, please? So one of the ways that we work with employers is that every apprentice has a work-based mentor. So that is an individual that is actually based within their organisation, and that individual is somebody that is very, very important and integral, really, to helping that apprentice achieve success. And the work-based mentor, it can be the line manager of the apprentice, but it doesn't have to be the line manager. It can be any sort of person within the organisation that can help with these activities. We do have some examples of the work-based mentor not actually being someone who's of a higher rank than the actual apprentice, but normally it is somebody who's of a higher rank. So that work-based mentor is the person in the organisation that has a good sort of grasp of what the apprenticeship is about, the knowledge, skills and behaviours linked to that apprenticeship, and has a very good grasp and idea of what the actual apprentice's role is and what their job is in the workplace, so that they can sort of meet with the apprentice and think about their role and think about the knowledge, skills and behaviours, and look at ways of actually focusing the apprentice's work so that they're learning about these knowledge, skills and behaviours while actually delivering these things and delivering actual work in the workplace. So there's a number of different activities. And one of the important activities is the review process, the quarterly review process. So what happens with our apprentices is all the time they're on the apprenticeship, they're building up their portfolio of evidence, the knowledge, skills and behaviours. And in building that evidence up, it's reviewed every quarter. So we're checking from the last quarter what they have actually been able to achieve, what knowledge, skills and behaviours evidence they have. And potentially we might be giving them actions as to what other things they need to do. And this happens through the quarterly review process. So 4 times a year, there'll be a meeting, and that meeting is between the work-based mentor, the apprentice, and the apprentice has somebody called a portfolio support tutor from the university. So the 3 parties will meet. We'll review what the portfolio evidence is for the last quarter and put in actions, etc., linked to this. So really, those portfolio reviews, they'll happen at the quarterly meetings, but they might sort of happen informally between the quarterly meetings. because it might be that the apprentice and the work-based mentor are meeting informally between those formal meetings, and it's probably expected that actually some sort of review of learning and progress happens in an informal way between those meetings. So for instance, in terms of that, there's a formal quarterly review, but it may be during that quarter that the work-based mentor and the apprentice meet towards the beginning of that quarter to look at the work that they're going to be doing and how it aligns to the standard. They meet sort of towards the middle of that quarter to see how things are going and if anything needs tweaking. Are there any other work-based projects that could be linked to this? And then they meet near the end of the quarter informally to see how things have gone. Is there any action required? And then there's that formal meeting sort of when the quarter finishes. So really, the work-based mentor, those meetings can be informal. It all depends on how it's set up. It could be that the work-based mentor is working in the same team as the apprentice, and they're sort of talking on an informal basis, you know, on a weekly or daily basis, and it can be like that. Or it might be that they're in a different department or a different team, and it might be that a meeting, you know, a monthly meeting is set up, or a fortnightly meeting, or something like that. So some of the things then that really are important for the work-based mentor to help with is sometimes to help open doors to learning opportunities for the apprentice. So if the apprentice is basically in a role in which they can hit most of the knowledge, skills and behaviours, but maybe there's some part of the standard of the apprenticeship that maybe they don't do as often in their day-to-day role, then it's sitting down with the apprentice and thinking about any work-based projects or work shadowing opportunities, or any sort of bits of learning that can happen within the workplace to enable the apprentice to be able to take a fuller sort of part in that role linked to that part of the standard. An example on the CMDA is part of the standard, the apprentices need to show that they're managing a budget. Not every one of the apprentices may be managing a budget, but as long as they know that that piece of work is required and coming, then basically they could be given budget responsibility, they could do work shadowing, etc., etc. So really, the work-based mentor, the importance of that role is really to bring the apprenticeship to life for that apprentice, and to have a good understanding of what the apprentice is doing in their workplace, and a good understanding of the knowledge, skills and behaviours in the apprenticeship. Now, there are a couple of other things. So in terms of apprenticeships, there is an expectation that the apprentice will be taking 20% of their work time as off-the-job work. So in other words, 20% of their time where they're doing learning activities, where they're developing their knowledge, which may be linked to studying activities and things like this. And they do need to record this. So there might be cases where it's hard for the apprentice to achieve their 20%, or there's issues in place. So it's basically keeping an eye on that 20% and then helping facilitate things if that 20% is difficult to achieve. So they're the main activities really for the work-based mentor. Can I have the next slide, please, Taz?
Alex, just actually, if you don't mind, just before we move on to the next slide, there is a question in the chat for you, actually. So someone's asked that, could we include line managers in the quarterly review as well?
There isn't an issue with doing that, but in terms of the sort of official sign-offs, if that makes sense, we would only have the sign-off of the work-based mentor would be the person that's signing off the actual portfolio. So we wouldn't have sort of double or triple sign-offs from the employer, but there'd be absolutely no issue with them actually sitting in there and sort of seeing what's happening in terms of the apprentice's progress and everything.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'll move on.
Sorry to jump in, but isn't the line manager being involved a key element of the whole apprenticeship program? Sorry, it's Tony Summers. I asked that question. What I've found when other providers have been inspected by Ofsted, they've picked them up because the line managers and then someone more senior as the employer aren't involved in the whole program.
Yeah, I mean, as far as I know, there is nothing in the regulations which says that it has to be the line manager. But of course, the line manager is often the employer contact that can make things happen, if that makes sense, and open doors. So I do think that you make a very important point, but I don't believe it has to be. No.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to interrupt.
That's okay. No, thank you. Thank you. So in terms of the apprenticeship delivery, as the university and the business school, we are delivering an apprenticeship, the CMDA or the SLMDA, and we are delivering a degree. We're delivering portfolio building sessions. We're delivering endpoint assessment session building, sort of getting ready for endpoint assessment type sessions. And we're delivering all of those things as well. And then the apprentices are studying in their own time. They're taking advantage of any sort of learning opportunities they have that maybe because we're linked with the Chartered Management Institute that they're offering. So there's that sort of off the job side of the training and development, and that should form 20% of the apprentices contract. But what we've also got to be aware of is that we've got the 80% on the job element. So in effect, for all the other time that the apprentice is doing their role, we call that the 80%. They're still on the apprenticeship, and they still should be sort of putting into practice the knowledge that they've actually gained over taking part in the university activities and the CPD activities and the CMI activities, etc., etc. And they should be putting these sorts of things into practice in the workplace, so that they're almost able to sort of demonstrate that they've learnt about these things, and they're putting them into practice, and they're sort of reflecting on how these things have done, etc., etc. So really, it's important to understand that the apprenticeship is the whole of the apprentice's role, the 20% sort of off the job learning and the 80% on the job. And so this really links to the way that the employer is engaged really with the apprenticeship, and that the employer sort of understands that the whole of the role is linked to developing and actually achieving the apprenticeship. So that means that what the apprentice is doing in the workplace can be sort of tailored, linked to achieving the knowledge, skills and behaviours, while also doing the really important work-based practice that's going to help the organisation as well. So it's that understanding of both. And I think the important thing here is this synergy between the apprenticeship and between what the university is providing and what the employer is providing, and that we're all working together to make sure that it's sort of like quite a smooth sort of link between all of those things. Can I have the next slide, please? So some examples of sort of off the job training and on the job training we've got here. And off the job training is more about the sort of gaining of the knowledge and the reflection and how things have gone, and things like this. And on the job training is sort of actually putting these things into practice, if that makes sense, and then actually trying these things out in the workplace. And so it is 80-20, but hopefully that 20% is really helping the knowledge that they're gaining, and the better understanding of how to implement the skills is helping the apprentice to actually be able to implement those skills and be able to show those behaviours within the on-the-job training in the 80%. So really, one of the keys to apprenticeships being a success is that us, the university, the employer and the apprentice, we're all three working together. We've all got an understanding of what they need to achieve, and then the employer's got an understanding of the things that they can be doing in the workplace that is going to help the employer, but is also going to help the apprentice learn and achieve the apprenticeship itself. And so all three of us have got a synergy really in terms of the off-the-job and on-the-job training. Could I have the next slide? Sorry, I'm sounding like Chris Whitty, aren't I? Next slide, please. So I think sort of building on the point that I just made, some of the greatest success stories that we actually have on our apprenticeships where we've had sort of work-based projects, for instance, where apprentices have done work-based projects that are linked to a module, that are linked to a part of the standard that they need to show evidence of. And they've done that work-based project, but it's actually ended up being something really useful for their employer. And it's been something that's been able to create efficiencies for the employer. So an example we had on the CMDA, one of the apprentices for our management of communication module, they had to look at a communication issue in the workplace and then come back with they had to analyze it, then they had to come back with some solutions to it. This was an apprentice based in a branch of quite a large employer, and basically found this communication type issue and was able to sort of put things in place to really help and increase, make communication more effective within the branch that he was working. But actually, when this was presented back to his workplace, you know, they were so impressed that it was rolled out to a lot of branches. So actually, you know, that learning and everything, and that showing that that he developed his management of communication knowledge and skills, was able to really make a big efficiency for the organisation. We've had other examples where we've had sort of apprentices, a branch manager who sort of after, you know, doing various modules and developing their portfolio linked to project management, linked to marketing, etc., then was promoted to commercial manager of the actual organisation itself. So that promotion was directly linked to the apprenticeship. And then really across both the CMDA and the SLMDA, all the apprentices have to do an endpoint work-based project focused on a real issue within the workplace. And it's, you know, this is like the culmination and the part where they can really show that they've developed as a manager. But also they're not just writing about it, they're actually doing it, and then they're writing it up. And so we've had lots of different work-based projects for the very last part that Ready for EPA that have ended up in you know, significant efficiencies or things being delivered more effectively in the workplace. And I think that's really the key to you know, how we've actually written these degree apprenticeships, well, how we've gone about delivering them from the start, that we understand that actually it's the workplace and that work-based learning and development that really drives everything. And this isn't just about learning about something and studying, although that is a very important thing. It's about actually how can the learning take place in the workplace, and how can that benefit the employer as well. Thanks very much. So now I'd like to hand over to Patrick, who's our Higher and Degree Apprenticeships Manager.
Thanks, Alex. Right, I can't see myself, but I assume you can see me. I'll make that assumption. Thanks, Alex. Thanks for that thumbs up to help. Right, I'm the Higher and Degree Apprenticeship Manager at the University of Lincoln. I've been here for around 18 months, previously worked for 20 odd years in further education. And my role is to really oversee the apprenticeships throughout the university. So we offer apprenticeships in lots of different subject areas, including nursing and social work and food manufacturing, as well as the excellent ones that we offer within LIBS with the CMDA and the SLMDA. I work within the quality department within the university, and I work with somebody called Helen Pillinger, who's also on the call. Helen, do you want to just give a quick wave and say hello? Helen, are you there?
Can you not see me? I can see me.
I can hear you now and see you. Right. Thanks. So Helen works with me, and we kind of, like I said, manage the overall apprenticeships. Now, Helen does a lot on the contract side, on the funding side. So you may come in contact with Helen to do with things to do with the DAS and to do with any funding issues that you have, etc. But we do work very closely together. So if there's an issue, then it could be myself or it could be Helen that's dealing with that. So then what I want to do today is just briefly go over the issues to do with Ofsted and the related issues. If we just move on to the next slide, Tars. Thank you. Right, so with Ofsted comes certain expectations that we're covering the legal side of running an apprenticeship. Now, to be fair, Prevent goes across the university anyway. It's not just an apprenticeship initiative. It's there, as it says in this slide, to tackle causes of radicalisation. So it's an onus on the whole university to comply with the Prevent legislation. But within apprenticeships and within Ofsted, that would be checked. So they would audit that and make sure that we are complying with this legislation. And I think up to the extent to which it would affect you and your apprentices, it would basically be something which the staff who are delivering to your apprentices would be aware of. They would have undergone training, and your apprentices would be made aware that this actually applies, and it's something which we would be complying with, but not something I would expect that we would be using, and not something which would affect you directly. However, it does go through our central university procedures, and we do have a central safeguarding officer named Judith Carey who would deal with any issues to do with this. So if anything was highlighted, it would go through an expert within the university who would look at any kind of issues, and then if it was deemed necessary, would actually then talk to yourselves and talk to the people within the school and progress things in that way. So it's just to be aware of it rather than to be concerned about this element. The next slide please, Taz, is the British values. Now, this is something which relates to the first one, the Prevent, in the fact that this is what the government would like people to internalise and understand as the British values. Now, this is something, again, which Ofsted, when they come in, they would want to know whether or not the apprentices understood this and were aware of it. It's an interesting one, really, since we've introduced level 6 and 7 into the Ofsted framework. It's something we've had some quite heated debates with some of the lecturers at level 6 and 7 about, well, what's really expected here with British values? It's not trying to brainwash people into saying this is how you must behave and this is what British values is and this is what a British person does, etc. And I think particularly at the higher levels, it's more of a, well, this is what's set out in the British values. What do you think about it? So it's being aware of it again as something which is there and which is again in the statute and is followed by Ofsted. But not necessarily something you have to follow to the letter, and this, but it is something which is set out by the government, something which Ofsted will check on. So it's something which we would want apprentices to be aware of. Okay, next slide, please, Taz. Being inspection ready, now I have to say, Taz and Alex have done an excellent job in putting this into context for your particular qualification and your particular apprentices. The Ofsted has only come in on April the 1st for level 6 and 7. So previous to this, Ofsted would be in level 5 and below for apprenticeships. So it's only just come under the Ofsted scope. Now, doesn't really matter in some ways because we've been delivering the apprenticeship to the right standard anyway. We've been delivering it as you would expect to deliver an apprenticeship. It just means that when Ofsted come in, they would actually look at this as well and they would inspect this area. Now, what was been mentioned already is the education inspection framework. And under that framework, Ofsted would look at the intent, implementation and impact of the curriculum. So Taz has already outlined this very, very well. And I think the area to kind of think about from an employer's perspective is the impact. Really, the question Ofsted would come in and say, well, why is your apprentice doing an apprenticeship? Why not just do the degree? Okay. Now, the one answer to that is, well, it's part of our levy, and therefore with the levy, it makes sense to use the apprenticeship route. This is not really the kind of response that Ofsted are looking for, if I'm being honest. The kind of response Ofsted are looking for is what real benefits and what value added an apprenticeship gives you. I think you've already seen from what Taz and what Alex has already said, is there is a lot of extra things wrapped around the degree here, which is aimed at the apprentice and is aimed at improving their performance from when they started the apprenticeship to when they finished. So at the beginning of the apprenticeship, we'll have done a knowledge, skills and behaviours skills scan to look at, well, where does this apprentice lie on these knowledge, skills and behaviours? How would you rate yourself 1 to 5 out of these knowledge, skills and behaviours? And what we're looking for is an improvement in those knowledge, skills and behaviours over the time of the apprenticeship, so that at the end of the apprenticeship they're ready to do their endpoint assessment. So to do that, we're assuming a low start at the beginning against the knowledge, skills and behaviours at levels 6 and 7, and then at the end of the apprenticeship they're pretty confident of achieving all of those knowledge, skills and behaviours, which is what we're recording within the portfolio, within the learner portfolios. So that kind of impact, if you like, is the impact that the apprenticeship, the 20% in the classroom or off the job, and the 80% on the job, the 100%, has had on that individual. So what is the impact on that individual of the apprenticeship? How has it improved their performance? How has it improved their confidence? What kind of skills have they gained, which is the skills part of the knowledge, skills and behaviours? Have their behaviours improved? The knowledge improved? So how has the whole package, if you like, improved this person as a manager in this case? To make sure that this is happening and this impact is happening, this is why we need this partnership, which Alex has outlined, between the apprentice, the employer and the provider. So we need to know from the line manager or from the mentor who's involved in the reviews that the apprentice is progressing, is improving, is achieving the knowledge, skills and behaviours. There is a level of confidence here that this is working and this is happening. And this is what us as a provider is there to measure. So we're there to say, well, yes, we believe it is happening. Yes, we think you're halfway there towards achieving the knowledge, skills and behaviours that you'll need to achieve your endpoint assessment at the end of the day. So that whole package is really what we're trying to achieve. And then this is what Alex laid out fairly successfully, I think, in his presentation there. This is really what the heart of it is. And this is why you're here today, to try and make sure that we cement that partnership and that we all understand what we're trying to achieve here. So that's what we're, on the third bullet point there, that's what we're aiming for. It's the understanding how we can support the apprenticeship journey. How can we make sure that they do achieve that successful conclusion that we're aiming for with the knowledge, skills and behaviours? If Ofsted came in and they talked to you about it, that's the kind of questions they'd be asking. They'd be asking about, well, how do you know that your apprentice has improved or has progressed since they started their apprenticeship? So you might be aware of the skills scan at the beginning. You'd be aware from the reviews where your apprentice is up to. You'd be aware of the challenges that they've got going forward to finish off the apprenticeship. That's all Ofsted are interested in. And then we'd say the same, and hopefully everybody would be on the same page about understanding where the apprentice journey is up to for each of the individuals. On the next slide, Tars. So again, this kind of lays out some different aspects of the apprenticeship journey. And really, you don't need to know every little part of this. I think the thing to keep in mind is that idea of the starting point and the end point. Where would you, as the employer, what benefits are you looking for? What changes are you looking for within each of the apprentices that you have? What changes are you noticing? What improvements are you noticing in performance from the apprentices? This is the key to it. As long as you're identifying changes, improvements, even if it's within the knowledge side of things from units that they're doing or in how they behave in the workplace, then this is all this is all that we're looking for really with the apprentice journey, that there's actually some value added here. It's not just the degree, it's not just the master's qualification, it's also the change in the person, so that the person is much more confident and able by the end of the apprenticeship than at the start of the apprenticeship. Is there one more slide, Tars? Or is that the end?
No, that's it, Patrick. Thank you very much for that. That's great.
Thanks, Tars.
Perfect. So, Yeah, so over to me again, and we sort of made some good time, and so we've got a little bit of time for a bit of Q&A, and this is where I really want to sort of bring in the rest of the team. So bring back Alex and Patrick and Helen and Anna as well, in terms of to be able to answer some of your questions. So I'm hoping that you've got, you know, what we've sort of spoken about has given you some food for thought. So feel free to sort of, you know, put anything in the chat in regards to what we've already spoken about, or in that case, if there's anything that you may sort of have, any sort of points within your organisation that you want answering or need sort of clarifying, feel sort of free to put those in the chat as well, and we'll sort of do our best to sort of provide some answers to those as well. But this section here really, as I say, is a Q&A, and it's looking at sort of the opportunities and challenges for you as the employer and for the apprentices. And whilst people sort of give those questions a bit of thought, I thought maybe I can throw in another question to sort of for you guys to have a think about, regards to particularly the last 12 months. What have your challenges been? And, you know, we've been sort of in the middle of this sort of pandemic, and, you know, we've had to do things a little bit differently out from the normal. And what sort of challenges or even opportunities have that sort of created? It'd be great for us to sort of understand from your perspective what that has been, so we can sort of apply and use those going forwards there. So yeah, so if people want to sort of put it in a chat, or if they want to sort of you know, sort of verbally sort of put that across, then feel free to do so. Any takers on that?
Tars, I can, I know, sorry, I'm not an employer, but
No,
I can give a perspective on that. Particularly for our apprentices that were getting towards the end of the apprenticeship and doing their work-based projects, we sort of start planning a year before the work-based project. So we ask our apprentices to go and speak to their work-based mentors and speak to their employers about what sort of projects they might be able to do. So for our first cohorts that finished, we did all that before the pandemic actually started. So they all had sort of good ideas of what their work-based projects were going to be, and they were signed off by employers. But then, unfortunately, things changed massively. So, for instance, for certain projects, capital wasn't available, or for certain projects, departments were just completely realigned, if that made sense. So there was a lot of nervousness, I think, again, amongst our apprentices, because they'd already had these plans of what they were going to do. So we did a lot of work with them in terms of sort of showing that that we could realign what their projects were going to be, and also showing the understanding that our endpoint assessment organisation, the CMI, did understand that actually maybe these projects needed to be realigned, and maybe they weren't going to be fully delivered in the timescale that we originally thought about. So the CMI were fully aware of that and fully supportive of that. So what we did with some is they ended up changing their projects. With others, they ended up stretching their projects out and saying that they were going to hit maybe the first 1 or 2 milestones by the end of the apprenticeship, and then they were going to have a roadmap for the rest when capital might be available, etc., etc. So we managed to actually get round it all, but it was a challenge, definite challenge.
Perfect. No, thank you, Alex. That's great. I actually do have a question from I think it's Tony, if I'm right. And again, Alex, this one's probably one for yourself. So, do we still include the master's qualification within the SLMDA, or is it an add-on or not covered by the levy?
Well, recently there's been changes with the SLMDA. So all the cohorts that have already started, the master's qualification is part of it. But due to the changes that have come from the ESFA, I believe, and from government, now actually it isn't necessarily going to be part of it for future cohorts. So we're still working on our plans around that. So we will make sure all employees are informed on that. But unfortunately, I believe for the future cohorts, it is not going to be in the way that it is at the moment, although we're looking at what we can do about that.
Perfect, thank you. And we have another one in from Claire Phillips. So working in a manufacturing organisation, we've had to sort of overnight modify the workplace and effectively communicate with the workforce to ensure people felt safe at work, to encourage ideas from the workforce, encouraged ideas from the workforce. It's been a challenge. So that's good to know, Claire, in terms of sort of the adaptation that's sort of taking place there within your sort of organisation there.
Yeah, but I mean, also, if the actual apprentice is sort of managing those adaptations, that is really good sort of work-based evidence and work-based work for their portfolios. If the apprentice is doing work to communicate with the workforce or changing things, etc., even though that's maybe not forming part of the module that we're teaching at that time, they'll be using project management skills, stakeholder management skills, communication management skills, probably marketing skills, etc., So that's stuff that can be recorded by the apprentice and it goes to their portfolio, even though we've not delivered it to them, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. And Claire also sort of follows on, actually, Alex, into that. How often do sort of apprentices meet with the university? So maybe I'm thinking what Claire's sort of referring to is how often do the apprentices sort of go to university as part of their sort of program?
Well, that question has a strange answer at the moment because all our provision is completely online at the moment. But before the pandemic, we did have so that on the CMDA every module, there's a day of face-to-face teaching, and then there was weekly webinars after that. On the SLMDA, I believe there was 2 days of face-to-face teaching per module and weekly webinars as well. That also the apprentices have a portfolio support tutor, and they would do group and individual tutorials in addition to those face-to-face and days and the weekly webinars. So quite often, not necessarily every week, but there are quite often opportunities to meet either in person or online. Now, at the moment, everything is online. So all of what I just described is still happening, but those face-to-face days are completely online and all the meetings are happening online as well. So really, there's quite a lot of opportunities, not only with the module tutor who's teaching the module, but with the portfolio support tutor. And then, of course, there's also the quarterly reviews as well that'll happen on top of all of those as well.
Absolutely, quite right. And yeah, so whilst we're sort of waiting for any sort of further sort of questions to come in, I mean, I can sort of go back and sort of touch on parts of the sort of employer survey that you sort of sent back to us, and so we're grateful for your feedback there. And there was one sort of question particularly, actually, which actually, if you don't mind sort of popping into the chat.
Hi.
Oh, hello. Yeah, so sorry about that. And yeah, so we were sort of looking at, there was a bit of a 50-50 sort of split in terms of people being aware around sort of quarterly reviews. So I think that's one area which we certainly want to sort of make people aware of, and the importance of actually conducting these sort of quarterly reviews. And now I'm sort of following this up with sort of, you know, quarterly, at least sort of quarterly health checks with employers, where we can sort of have those discussions of effectively from sort of provider to employer direct, and talk about sort of the degree of apprenticeships on a wider basis and any sort of issues within that there. But one question was around sort of the check of the key skills and behaviours of an apprentice, and in terms of how people check that their apprentice is actually developing these. And a lot of people sort of did seem to tick other, that was quite high. And I wonder if you sort of, if you're one of those, if you sort of don't mind sort of putting in the chat in terms of exactly what you sort of meant by other, just to be able to help sort of clarify to us in terms of what that is, and maybe that can sort of help us sort of provide some sort of further feedback there. Yeah, so any other sort of questions that people may have, you know, regarding sort of degree apprenticeships or around their employees, please sort of put it in the chat or put your hand up and you can sort of verbalize that if you like. So great. I mean, just going back to the survey, I mean, I think what the sort of survey showed was that there was, and I mentioned this at the beginning, was that there's actually a really good dialogue between the employers, the work-based mentors and the apprentices, because we found that a lot of the sort of employers actually sort of liaising directly with the actual apprentices as well for sort of feedback and progress, as well as much as the sort of more formal channels of reporting back through sort of you know, quarterly or sort of monthly reports as well then. Good stuff. Right, okay, so so we seem to be sort of slowed down maybe on the questions front there as well, but yeah, I think if I'm happy to sort of give people sort of time back. We're a few minutes sort of ahead of time there, but if there's no sort of further questions, then what I'll do is sort of start to sort of wrap this up a little bit there, and as we do so, I'll sort of mention in terms of actually OneNote was actually one of these things that just sort of popped into my mind actually in terms of how to get access about learners sort of data and progress, and that's something that was not particularly high on the survey in terms of people knowing about it. And what we're going to sort of plan to do as a result of that is so I meant OneFile, not OneNote. And what we're going to do about that is look to sort of create small bite-sized videos, so we get a repository of sort of these resources, which should make it easier for you to be able to then access and understand how to sort of navigate your way around sort of OneFile more sort of successfully, and how you can, in between sort of reports, being able to sort of access information as and when you need to. I know all the sort of work-based mentors get shown OneFile as part of sort of the induction, as Alex sort of mentioned previously, but it's probably good that everybody is aware of this and everybody has access, so you can sort of dip in and out as you need to there. So I'm just going to sort of cover off, bear with me, my screen went blank. Yeah, so, and finally, in terms of sort of just finishing off in terms of your sort of responsibilities, what I wanted to sort of point out was the things like breaking learnings or changing circumstances, such as changing roles or leaving employment as such. What we want sort of ideally to happen is the employees, the apprentices, to go through the employers, to go through the sort of right channels so we can process information correctly. That will sort of help everybody in that sort of tripart relationship, if you like, to make sure that information isn't getting sort of lost by sort of people getting missed out in that sort of loop of communication there. So that's just something sort of to bear in mind and to sort of reinforce really sort of back within your organization there. And also, if any of your other colleagues really would like to be involved and, you know, would like to sort of, or would sort of find this sort of information useful, then again, please send me their details and I'll sort of have them included for sort of future sessions there. So please do stay in touch. As you say, you can sort of contact me from an employer engagement perspective. And if we haven't already got sort of health checks in the diary, then please drop me a line as a reminder and we'll get something in the diary. We can put those in on a regular basis there. So my email is there. And in terms of any sort of administrative queries, whether it's CMDA or the SLMDA, you can contact the appropriate sort of email there on that basis there. And yeah, so the next session we're planning for towards the end of the year, sort of back end of October, potentially. And like I say, in the interim, please sort of get in contact. I will sort of reach out to you in terms of your feedback, how you found this, and anything else that you'd like us to sort of cover. And we'll then sort of look at sort of building that into our next session. So again, I want to make sure that these things are relevant to you and you're being able to sort of learn as much as you can there. So so yeah, so I don't know if anybody else wants to sort of say anything at the moment. There's nothing else in the chat, but if not, then I thank everybody for sort of coming along and appreciate your sort of time and effort that you sort of taken out your sort of busy schedules to sort of be with us. And yeah, and we'll be in touch sort of very shortly, sort of for your feedback for today's session, and also sort of outline future sessions as well. So thank you very much for coming along.